r/NoSleep. Posted by u/mmartinv. I was hired to fix a pipe, but I ended up learning the secret of a haunted mansion. The work order said Domenia Place. Domenia is a not old neighborhood. It's a combination of well-maintained mansions from the 1800s, abandoned single-family homes from the 1900s, and overpriced condos built within the last 10 years. The building I pulled up to was truly an overwhelming display of wealth. It was built in the 1800s when an old German family struck it rich selling booze to the huddled masses in the New World. 3 stories, stonework everywhere, and the basement had full-size windows poking up out of the ground. The Metzgers wanted everyone to know that they were doing well, so they built a home almost as big as an IKEA. The mansion had seen more than its fair share of tragedies. A kidnapping and a string of suicides in the early 1900s had people saying the old house was cursed. But even with all the sadness associated with the mansion, it was a local favorite for date nights. A few years back, the family that owns the house converted a large section of the first floor into a restaurant. They also allowed tours of the upper floors on weekends, so this wasn't my first time at the mansion. A couple of years ago, my wife Katie signed us up for one of the romantic ghost tours for our anniversary. We spent 45 minutes walking the upstairs halls learning the tragic story of Arthur and Elle Metzger. We learned 3 things in that 45 minutes. Elle Metzger was kidnapped but escaped, Arthur Metzger drowned in the bathtub just before Elle returned, and Elle shot herself a week later. Then we had pasta in the restaurant. Katie thought the night was romantic and I liked my baked potato. I parked my van in the restaurant parking and took one more look at the work order. It said the building was having water pressure issues, which were not surprising given the weather. Once the temperature hits freezing, half the houses in the city end up with broken pipes. Are you the plumber? I looked up at the large house but didn't see anyone. Over here. To your left. A slight woman with brown hair and a long wool coat waved me over as she bounced up and down on her toes trying to stay warm. I'm Ms. Wright. I'd shake your hand, but it's too cold for that. Let's go inside, I laughed, and she led me around to the side entrance. I'm Gary. The office should have sent you a text message with my picture. Smartphones, she said with wide eyes. What interesting little devices those are. I didn't know what to say to that, so I got straight to business. The ticket said you were having some trouble with water pressure. Have you noticed any leaks? I haven't noticed any yet, but I haven't been searching for them either. We have an event tonight and so much needs to be done before the restaurant opens. Well, I'll see if I can get this straightened out for you. I didn't see the water meter when I drove in. Do you happen to know where the main water line is? It's behind the carriage house. I'll get to it then. If you need anything, just yell. I'll hear you, she said. Then Elle glided down the hall muttering to herself about napkins and gift bags. First, I checked the water pressure. There wasn't any. Then, I hustled behind the carriage house and found the meter. Water was flowing, which meant there was a significant break. I shut everything down and started looking for water damage. I checked the yard, the carriage house, and eventually found my way back inside the main building. I figured that since there wasn't water pouring down the stairs, the break must have been in the basement. I looked all around the first floor for access to the basement and was about to call for Ms. Wright when I heard, "Can I help you, Gary?" from just behind my right ear. I jumped and squealed a little, which I felt was a perfectly acceptable response to have in a mansion that gives ghost tours. I saw you walk past the library and it looked like you were searching for something, she said with a grin. I'm looking for the basement. With the amount of water that went through, there should be a swimming pool somewhere, but I haven't found it yet. This way to the cellar, she said, and led me through the restaurant to a paneled wall that disguised the door. The basement was a huge open space filled with all manner of detritus. Barrels, old furniture, and racks of wine bottles created islands in a sea of emptiness. The one thing I was trying to find wasn't there. The whole space was bone dry. With Ms. Wright's help, I found where the water line entered the mansion. The pipes pierced the top of a bricked-up painted-over archway. I turned to Ms. Wright. "Betcha the leak's in there," I said, gesturing to the wall. "You wouldn't happen to know how to get behind that arch?" Her mouth lit with a mischievous smile. "I do," she said, "but it's kind of creepy and there is a ladder." I followed as Ms. Wright marched us out of the basement toward the carriage house. The closer we got to the building, the more excited Ms. Wright seemed. She was absolutely bubbly by the time we crossed the threshold of the carriage house. Without any hesitation, she walked to the back corner of the building and pulled up a trapdoor. "These are the caves," she said in a ghostly sing-song. Then in her normal voice she said, "We don't allow tours down here, but the caves are without a doubt the spookiest place on the whole property." Then with a grin and a wink, the young lady disappeared down the ladder. The ladder passed through a thick layer of stone before it opened into a cave the size of a small strip mall. I swept my flashlight around. It was obvious that this space had been used for storage in years past with shelves and grooves chiseled into the rock. It was also obvious that this area had a water leak. Ms. Wright flipped an old breaker, and a line of lamps lit the ceiling with a sickly yellow glow. "This is the way back to the house," we walked on as she gave me the guided tour of the cave. The Metzger family originally made its fortune selling beer. They used the caves as cold storage to keep the barrels fresh. Eventually, the house was built at the cave's mouth. "Why did they block the entrance?" I asked as I scanned a pipe with my flashlight. It was assumed that the caves were sealed because of Mrs. Metzger's kidnapping, but there are some that believe the whole story hasn't been told. My wife loves a good ghost story. The beam of my flashlight landed on the break in the water pipe. Found it. I pulled out my cell phone and took a picture of the hole. It was one of the strangest breaks I'd ever seen. It was almost as if the pipe had been melted. "Do you think you'll be done before sunset?" "It will be close." We began to walk back to the entrance under the carriage house. The good news is that I have everything in the van to fix it. The bad news is that after I fix it I'll need to pressurize the line to make sure nothing else in the house broke. That can take some time. Before we climb out of here, I should show you the surgery. It will only take a moment and I'm sure your wife will love the story," Ms. Wright said as she walked past the ladder and pushed deeper into the cave. I was apprehensive, but Ms. Wright assured me the surgery room wasn't far. After a short walk past the ladder, an inlet hit a second smaller cavern. Nestled against the cave wall stood a stout wooden lean-to. After some prompting by Ms. Wright, I took pictures of the structure. I didn't touch anything. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the first person to have seen this building in a very long time, even though Ms. Wright was standing next to me. Inside, a bronze table with wooden legs was the central fixture of the room. Jars and linens sat decayed but untouched on shelves that had not seen sunlight in decades. Pans of instruments were left on tables waiting for a surgeon that never returned. We walked back to the ladder and curiosity got the best of me. "Why would anyone build a room for surgeries in a cave?" I asked. "That is a very good question, Gary," Ms. Wright said. "Are you interested in ghost stories now?" "Well, I'd rather stay away from the spooky stuff. But I just can't imagine anyone coming down here for help, and certainly not so many people that they built a room for it. It is a mystery," Ms. Wright explained. "The only Metzger in the family that we know had training as a surgeon was Arthur Metzger. Unfortunately, Arthur's journals were destroyed by his brother after his death. It's one of those things lost to time. Perhaps. Oh well. I started my climb up the ladder. That pipe is not going to fix itself. It took a while climbing up and down that ladder, but I got the main leak fixed. Unfortunately, there was a second. I tracked it down to the bathroom just off the master suite. The bathtub had a fixture on an exterior wall and the cold weather must have cracked it. I was a little stumped. How was I going to open that wall without ruining it? Then I noticed an odd lip in the wainscoting. With a push it opened up to reveal a hidden cabinet. I immediately noticed the broken pipe. It had the same strange wear as the pipe in the cave. I took a picture of the pipe. Then I saw the book. The book was in fairly good condition. I pulled the book out of the cabinet and studied the cover. It was small with a yellow leather flap cover and a daffodil embossed on the binding. It looked like something my wife would put in her purse. I stood up to look for Ms. Wright and she was standing a foot in front of me when I straightened up. I didn't squeal this time. I was too tired from climbing that cave ladder. "Gary, I wanted to let you know that Mr. Metzger is on his way. He might have some questions about the plumbing," she said, and then quickly walked from the room. I called after her. "I found a book next to the pipe. Put it on the table and I'll have a look at it while you finish up." I put the book on the table and got back to work. I had just finished replacing the pipe when a man yelled from downstairs. "Are you up there?" "Just wrapping up," I called back. I slid the panel back in place, grabbed my duffel, and went to introduce myself to Mr. Metzger. We met as he crept cautiously down the side of the hallway. He was a heavy-set man in his 60s, and he looked legitimately frightened. "Who are you? You're not you, are you?" he said as he gestured vaguely in my direction. "I'm Gary. I'm the plumber." "A plumber? What a relief," he said and stood up a little straighter. "What are you doing here?" "You had a couple busted pipes, but we got it taken care of. As soon as I turn the water back on, your kitchen should be ready to roll." "Oh, we don't open tonight. It's the anniversary of Al Metzger's death," he said in hushed tones. Then he narrowed his eyes at me. "What do you mean by we? Is someone else here?" "Just your assistant, Ms. Wright." "You are here," he bellowed at the ceiling. Then he stomped from room to room waving his arms and screaming nonsense. The only words I could make out were, "It won't work whatever you're planning and no one will ever know." I left. I had pictures of the work I did, and I could invoice him after he was done doing whatever it was he was doing. I went to turn the water on at the meter and Ms. Wright was standing next to the carriage house bouncing up and down in her long wool coat. "That Metzger guy is throwing a fit in the main house," I said. "Are you going to be okay? I could stick around if you want me to." Ms. Wright stopped bouncing and for just a moment she looked like she'd won. It was the same look my grandma used to give me right before she cleaned me out playing gin rummy. "You don't have to worry about me, Gary. I'm about to leave. You did a great job today." "Thank you. I'm glad I was able to get it straightened out for you." Ms. Wright laughed and walked towards the parking lot. "Good night, Gary. Say hi to your wife for me." When Ms. Wright said "say hi to your wife for me," I didn't think much about it. It wasn't until I was home that I knew what she meant. I was looking for a pen in my duffel when I discovered the book. The book was small with a yellow leather flap cover and a daffodil embossed on the binding. My wife Katie convinced me that we should open the book. This meant that I looked over her shoulder while she opened the book. L. Wright Metzger was printed in block letters on the inside cover. Katie was excited and I was nauseous. Katie gently flipped through the book reading passages here and there, but I found it hard to concentrate on her words. My mind kept reliving the moments of the day. After the last passage dated March 4th, the day of L. Metzger's death, today's date, a typed letter was folded and tucked between the pages. Katie read the letter out loud. It was hard to hear. Afterward, my wife asked if I'd like to see the painting she found of L. Wright Metzger. I declined. "I'm pretty sure I know what she looks like." I typed out L's letter and included it below. "Dear Belva, I'm writing you for 2 reasons. 1, you are a friend, and 2, you are a lawyer. You have always been kind and circumspect regarding the lives of those within your circle, and I would value your advice in the matter of my husband's death and his foul legacy. Arthur may have been a trained surgeon, but he thought of himself as a student of natural philosophy. It was important for him to observe the natural world firsthand. He also admired that dubious Dr. Sims. I have learned that Arthur perfected his trade on vagabonds in the caves under the carriage house. He has an operating room and I have been a patient in it. I should start from the beginning. Arthur was such a well-respected surgeon that I did not suspect his family's fortunes had taken a major blow. Our marriage was a saving grace for the estate. I truly thought at first that he loved me, but once the marriage was finalized and the honeymoon over, he threw himself into his practice and his nurse. I confronted him with my suspicions of infidelity. He denied them. He told me I was irrational, that I was emotional. I began to doubt myself. For a short while he was attentive again, loving again. But then I learned I was pregnant. I almost wonder if they realized before I did. I don't know which one of them decided that I shouldn't keep the child. I just know that I woke up in an operating room. Anesthesia is such a fickle thing. I could hear their voices and feel the sharp pressure of them cutting out pieces of me, but I couldn't scream or beg or cry. They left me on the operating table and I listened. They were so pleased with themselves. They were going to wake me up in my bed. Tell me I had been in an accident. Tell me I lost the child. Tell me how normal it was not to remember trauma. Somehow, I summoned the strength to stand. I stole away into the cave. They looked for me and every time I heard a voice, I pushed myself deeper into the dark. It was days, but I found my way into the city sewer. Then out. Fever was burning through me by then. It didn't feel like there was much time left. I don't remember why I decided to return to the mansion. I walked through the side door. I was quiet. No one heard me as I tiptoed up the stairs and into our suite. He was soaking in the bathtub with a wash rag draped over his forehead when I dosed him with his own ether. I watched him sink into the water before I rang for the servants. Everything was so busy after that, but I did have the presence of mind to tell Gerald, our butler, that Arthur's nurse had kidnapped me. I thought I was dying. Hell hath no fury, isn't that the phrase? Finally, I took some time to rest, but healing has been slow, and I have had bouts of fever. However, during my convalescence, I confiscated Arthur's journals. He wrote everything down. Every experiment Arthur performed is described on those pages. The callousness and injustice of it all revolt me. To think I loved that monster. I need your guidance, Belva. I believe Arthur's brother may have known of the experiments, or maybe he's just worried about his inheritance. I don't know. He has tried to call on me many times since Arthur's death. I'm just at a loss. What should I do next? Please write me soon. Yours dearly, L. Wright.